need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
With Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, everybody. It is Reality Grants. I am Jason Bermas. This is presented by RedVoiceMedia.com. Remember, we do it live Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. We go premium at the top of the next hour. RedVoiceMedia.com/Jason or RedVoiceMedia.com/Uncensored to support the broadcast. Start the first week for only $1, and then it's $10 a month after that. Or lock it in, lock it in for $100 for the year. Really helps the broadcast get going. So what are we going to be talking about today? We got plenty, and I want to start with a subject that I've been discussing for a very long time, and not just because there's a creepy owl, not just because we got the druidic mock human sacrifices going on, but because the Bohemian Grove is a place of great political outcome. And what do I mean by outcome? Well, this is a network of some of the most influential and rich people within that Anglo-American establishment. And it has been for quite some time. And really, probably the largest outward illustration of this fact is that nuclear weapons, nuclear power, their genesis comes from the Bohemian Grove. All right, this is a place where policy is set. So, when I see Clarence Thomas and the Bohemian Grove trending, okay, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? What makes it even more bizarre is that Clarence Thomas is trending with the Bohemian Grove from a news piece by an organization I've never heard of, not one time. And I've been in this game a very, very long time. I didn't go to the lengths to see who owns or when, quote-unquote, ProPublica started. But out of nowhere, ProPublica does this story, has a long Twitter thread going after Clarence Thomas and essentially saying, hey, this guy is taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts from a billionaire Republican. Shocker. He's only been in the court almost 30 years now. I'm shocked. Might even be over 30 years. Might be all the way back in, if you think about it, probably, 92? No, it's probably like 92. It's probably over 30 years. Let's look it up. Let's do it live. I don't want to get misquoted. You know, that's one of the things we can do here. Clarence Thomas becomes Supreme Court Justice. 1990. Yeah, more than 30 years ago. 33 years ago. Oh, people are going to love that one. 33 years, Jason. You knew that. Masonic. Ooh. You know, it's so funny. I'm certainly not a Mason, not a part of any secret society. I'm in a fraternity, which is a local one, Iota Tau Kappa, Oneonta, New York, SUNY New York system. Shout out. I'm not going to be able to make it to alumni weekend in just 2.5 weeks, all the way in New York. But I had somebody say something about Shade the Motion Picture the other day, that I give some kind of a Masonic handshake. No, I don't. I gave a handshake. I know what the Masonic handshake is. It's like a half a handshake. And that's not what I gave him, a real handshake. You know, like a grip that man shake. So, although, you know, again, symbolism plays a role, and that is certainly something we need to talk about. What we really need to talk about is the influence that this place has over the entire establishment, and why in the world would the news media focus it? Because it's everywhere. This ProPublica thing. Never heard of the organization whatsoever. No idea what their motives is, but it seems like they're pretty partisan and left-leaning and going after Clarence Thomas. Apparently, when we watch these news clips, including AOC talking about it and talking about how the Republicans are a criminal organization or rife with crime. Yeah, so are the Democrats. And I'm not sitting here holding water for any Republicans at all, because largely the Republican establishment, the conservative establishment, are Grovers, whereas it's not as many Democrats. In fact, Bill Clinton famously, when asked about it, says, "Isn't that where all the Republicans run around naked? Let's find it. Let's do it. Let's do it live." I think I have that in my film, Invisible Empire, but let's see if we can just do it on the fly here as I sit here and talk about it. I typed in Bill Clinton Bohemian Grove. We'll go to videos and see if it comes up rather easily. No. And a big nope. Let's see what DuckDuckGo has to do. Google constantly disappointing. Not a shocker. So let's do it. We got the DuckDuckGo. Oh, I can't reiterate how ridiculously bad the search results now are on Google. I typed in Bill Clinton, Bohemian Grove. This is what should have come up. The frustration is real. Oh, and you want AI. So a company that helps run the AI is in partnership with NASA, the NSA, on the AI and on the quantum computing. All right? They came in with the "don't be evil" while they were funded by In-Q-Tel, the CIA branch of funding technology. Okay, we're not evil, don't be evil. Now they're a Leviathan, and I can't type in something that should obviously come up first, and get it to come up. I got to go to an alternative search engine now. And will alternative search engines even be allowed? So let's see. Which one do we do? Do we do the top one? Let's do the top one. Let's see what we got. Oh, we got some clouds. Here we go.
What do you want me to talk about?
Yeah.
A fraud? No, it wasn't a fraud, but I'll be glad to talk to you if you'll shut up and let me talk now.
Woo!
And a fraud, let me tell you something.
Oh, see, look at that. Let me tell you something. I got the crowd behind me now. Now, woo! Bill Clinton. Say what you want about him. He was a popular president. Not as popular as the Barack star, but they gave him his own cult, right? They didn't just give Bill Clinton the Nobel Peace Prize as his inauguration gift, but they did do that for the Barack star, who'd done nothing for peace. But I acknowledge reality, and the reality is that this guy was extremely popular for a very long time and still pretty popular with the left and liberals. Yep.
I'll tell you a couple of stories about fraud.
There it is. Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove.
The Bohemian Club. As you say, the Bohemian Club? That's where all those rich Republicans go up and stand naked against redwood trees, right? I've never been to the Bohemian Club, but you ought to go. It'd be good for you. Get some fresh air.
Woo! Woo! So again, all those Republicans sitting there peeing on the trees. And Richard Nixon famously has some recorded audio on calling it the G-dammest, most effity, as in agony, thing he'd ever been a part of, ever. You know that they hire male prostitutes, okay, male prostitutes and male porn stars, gay porn stars, to service the Grove members at this all-male club. And look, I'm not even getting into Clarence Thomas or his sexuality, but for this to end up being a headline, okay, in the San Francisco Chronicle this week is astounding to me. And again, it wasn't really from the San Francisco Chronicle. Plenty of other media outlets covered the Grove aspect, but really didn't talk too much about what it meant. All right, they certainly didn't go into the fact that this is a place where I believe the plans that have been set, the discussions that have taken place via Bilderberg, with a much smaller crew, with about 125 people over a weekend instead of 2 weeks. That's how compartmentalization works. This is how these actual, not online social networks, but actual social networks work. All right, that's how it happens. So you have the Bilderberg Club, which is now going to be meeting in probably a month or less, 2 months max. It's somewhere mid-May to mid-June. Usually doesn't go past the third week of June whenever they decide. Usually mid-May at this point. Still not on Bilderberg.org. A lot of people will send me fake articles when I start asking for the location. Every year there's fake articles. So before you start sending or posting, the Bilderberg group's here, take a look. See if it's backed up by anything. See if it's a reputable source. Because literally, I didn't find out where and when Bilderberg was going to be until the Thursday that they started checking people in New York City. And I happened to not only be in Iowa, but on top of being in Iowa, I had my girl up. So there was no going and actually challenging the system, doing what I'd done, especially when it's in the United States. You know, my passport isn't up. I just got my Iowa license. I just had to utilize. Do I have it right here? I think I do. I think I got my passport right here. And if I got to go overseas, I don't know how we would raise the money for it. But it's certainly something that needs to be done. Someone needs to confront Peter Thiel. All right? And not just on what happened with SVB Bank, but I'm more interested what happened within the Trump administration. The fact that you had this guy that was literally the technology supervisor of the administration. And where was he? Where was he in November of 2020? Oh, Peter Thiel, MAGA 3X, Peter Thiel. I mean, he's part of the show. Peter's a part of the club. Peter's big tech, big social media, big government, big spying on your ass. And it's not just Peter. I want Eric Schmidt as well. I want to know who's going to be there from Big Pharma. I want to know who's going to be there from the banking industry. So there's actually a couple of photos that are posted of Clarence Thomas during this time inside the Bohemian Grove. And essentially, the thing is that this guy hasn't broken any laws. All right? And they want him taken down for a reason. And that's really why we're doing this. And it's not, in my opinion, a right or left reason. It's a right and wrong reason. He's judging that you shouldn't mutilate children. And this is the new step. That mutilation of children on behalf of this new agenda, which is really a transhuman agenda, is being full throttled. And my fear with this piece is this is a setup. In other words, all of these mainline talking heads have a narrative. And the narrative is that this is a self-regulating organization and that they don't have an ethics committee and that we can't prosecute this person. Okay, we can't bring up charges because there doesn't seem to be any. Now, is there undue influence? I'm not sitting here carrying water for Thomas. I would say, of course. This is what cronyism is. This is why we don't have an actual constitutional republic or actual capitalism. Because this is open collusion inside of a closed system where they do a cremation of care ritual in front of their quote-unquote deity, the owl, in which they cleanse their conscience of any care of the wrongdoing and evils they've done in the prior year on behalf of that same goal. Midsummer Night sets us free. Ah! And you hear screaming. Come on. Let's get with reality here. But at the same time, Thomas hasn't gone over the deep end and isn't part of this new somehow children who can't drive a vehicle, who can't smoke a cigarette, all right, whose parents are supposed to be their guardians and custodians for better or for worse, okay, and have influence over how their child is raised. Now look, plenty of shitty parents out there. Plenty of them. A lot. And we all know that if we grew up in a public school system. Negligent parents, parents that just don't give a damn, all right, period. Parents that make the wrong decisions. The vast majority of them, if not all of them, literally, if not all of them, want to be informed if their boy is starting to talk as if they are a biological girl, okay? And then the school system plays into the mental illness, or their daughter, vice versa, thinks that they are a boy. They don't want that held back from them. Just about, I can't imagine any parent would want that held back from them. But now we're not only holding it back, but we're encouraging it on purpose, and we're calling it love is love. Love is love. No, bullshit. Let somebody become an adult. Okay? I was thinking about it the other day because time just fucking flies, man. Boom, 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 boom. 20 years has gone quick. Quick. And I often think to myself, how have I progressed in the last 20 years? What is the difference? If you go look at me 15 years ago, I'm wearing like the same type of shirts, same type of hats, same type of clothes. I don't know that I've visually matured much from what I enjoy in clothing or pop culture or comedy or entertainment. They've all been pretty much the same thing. But what I have been able to do as I've moved through this stuff is not only amass skill sets, but see different levels and live different levels of responsibilities. All right? And whether that's responsibilities over my own life or the people that are working for me, if I'm managing a place, or even what I have to do on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis with my nieces, right? That's different levels of responsibility. And when you are immersed among young people, when I say young people, these are the people that are actually supposed to be able to make their decisions. We're talking 18 to 22 to 24, maybe, in that college arena. Especially, and now we're talking about 5-6 years ago that I'm involved in this. You see a lot of the naivety of the big picture, a ton of it. And discussions are a little more difficult with this generation because, in my opinion, they haven't been immersed in the civics lesson of critical thinking, of allowing your detractors to speak and then coming up with an intelligent argument against that detractor or a challenge against that idea. Instead, it's all run by emotion. I don't feel that way. So my biggest fear with this Thomas thing is that they're going to play up the idea that there isn't an ethics committee, that they can't bring this guy up on criminal charges. They obviously don't want him on the court. And when I say they, it's not just the Democratic establishment. Again, it's this transhuman establishment that just wants everybody gone, that isn't down like a clown Charlie Brown, that doesn't think that children should be wards of the state, essentially, that believe in parental rights. They want them out of here. They want them gone. They want them dunziddly-unzo. You get it? That's what they want. So, we've had Zombie J in the past speaking about what? Speaking about packing the Supreme Court. Oh, we're going to pack it on up now. That's dangerous because you start packing that Supreme Court and you're going to get some of the most outlandish and terrible rulings ever. We've already gotten terrible ruling after terrible ruling after terrible ruling. Saying that there was no standing in the 2020 election case is just bleh. It's beyond reproach. But again, you guys thought that people like Amy Coney Barrett were your friend, or John Kavanaugh, who's a disciple of Karl Mother Truckin' Rove. You're gonna trust that guy, Karl Rove, the We Create Reality guy? That guy? Nope. And by the way, Bill Barr is out there talking some Johnny nonsense about Trump because he's a piece of excrement, period. And he is as deep state as it gets. I mean, Bill Barr, Central Intelligence Agency, Epstein lawyer, Attorney General under Bush 1, the largest CIA spook / social climber / globalist that we have outwardly put into power, ever. I mean, that guy was a mover and shaker. That guy was a guy that was actually running shit and not a puppet. Okay? Yeah, he was a puppeteer. Now, everything may have not been by his direction, but he had a say, and he certainly enriched and empowered not only his family, but this ideal set of globalism and a quote-unquote new world order. Ruled by the law of man, not the law of the jungle. Not the law of the jungle, as he used to say. That's the reality. And yes, the Bush family, the hillbillies, they're part of the Grove Network. They're part of the Grove Network. So, I got two clips here. One is more of a local news, straight down the line clip, but I want you to get a feel for it. And notice how they gloss over what the Bohemian Grove is, and who goes to the Bohemian Grove and why. And once again, I'm going to tell you, I've done a ton of research. I'm upstairs. I'm not by my books, but you guys know I have the annals. It is not Moloch. I repeat, it is not Moloch. Let me repeat it again. It is not Moloch. And I get a lot of pushback from that. Jason, it is too No, it's not Moloch. It's not Baal. Now, there is a sacrificial element that is of that vein, for sure. There is that either effigy of a baby or a person that is lit on fire and sacrificed on behalf of care. But it's not ever referenced in their own material as Moloch, ever, 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 ever. 100%. They like the owl because the owl is a predator that sees in the night. The owl is wise. That is why its logo, and honestly, it's brought over by Uncle George Bromley, who was the high priest at the Grove for many years. All right? And he's got, I've got his biography downstairs. I mean, straight up, all up in the Grove. Brought over some of the Eastern mysticism from China. There used to be a large Buddha statue at the Grove. Changed it over to the owl via Bromley. All right? And there's so much evidence that basically, you know, this is a paganistic club that celebrates their power and their goals through a 2-week enchanted encampment of drag. You want to know why that drag is like the next step into the transhuman thing? Because they've been doing drag forever. Go watch the Good Shepherd, and they get used to it in college when they're part of Skull and Bones or some of these other clubs, Scroll and Key, etc. And they're in drag and they're doing these plays, and then they get in, and it's just all drag. All drag. It's in my film. It's in their books. That's not a question. So now you got billionaires and influencers in all sorts of arenas that are comfortable at least once a year, and who knows what's going on in their private life, of dressing up like women. Just throwing it out there. Just letting people know that's the reality. That's what's really going on at the Grove. So, you know, Clarence Thomas is aware of that. Clarence Thomas is there. I mean, I don't know that Clarence, I'm not even sure that Clarence is a full-on member. Apparently, he's just a guest of this billionaire donor. But if somebody has one of the new, I saw the newer, I should have picked it up. I saw one of the newest annals, if not the newest annal at one point, for about $300. And usually I'd pull the trigger on something like that. Decided not to for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe my bank account was a little low, didn't want to do it. And now I can't find it for under $2,500. And I'm not paying, obviously, I'm not paying used car prices for a book. Sorry. And that's one of the ones you can't find really anything online because it's so brand new. It's got a really hard, nice red cover. Any Grovers out there that might be listening and want to give me a copy, please contact me in the DMs. That's how I got this bad boy. Unzipped jeans. I mean, this one was pricey too. I'm so glad I got it for free. I think that this was still going for like $30-$40, sometimes more. So, without further ado, let's go to this news clip piece about Clarence Thomas and notice how the Grove is not emphasized, but it is shown and sort of mentioned.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is now responding to a report. He failed to disclose lavish gifts from a GOP megadonor. The report from ProPublica claims that those gifts included luxury trips, among them island hopping on a super yacht in Indonesia, all male retreats at an exclusive California club.
And see, it says treated to Bohemian Grove. And they don't even say Bohemian Grove's name in this thing at all. This is ABC. Okay. They're reporting on it, but what's the angle? Oh, he's committed crimes even though he's committed no crimes. Oh, cronyism exists even though we've known cronyism exists for some time. And basically, we need a system to rein in Clarence Thomas.
Fishing at a private resort in the Adirondacks. Justice Thomas released a statement saying he is dearest friends with the donor, Harlan Crow, and his wife, Kathy. Thomas also says, quote, early in my tenure at the court, I sought guidance from my colleagues and others in the judiciary and was advised that this sort of personal hospitality from close personal friends who did not have business before the court was not reportable.
And you've got to wonder if they weren't able to directly show any kind of a case involving this guy, because they would have shown that, what this is all about. But you start watching it, you figure out what this narrative is all about. Almost 300 watching. Can we get 100 thumbs up? Can we get some shares out there, everybody?
For more, let's bring in ABC News senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer. Devin, staying on that ProPublica report, despite public outcry from both members of Congress, Thomas seems to be shrugging this one off. Would you agree?
Both members of Congress. You mean both parties in Congress. But good try. I mean, you're only a professional news broadcaster.
Well, he's certainly acknowledging the relationship with that donor, Alexis, and pushing back on some of the insinuations in that explosive ProPublica report that you talked about. Not only does he sort of couch this pattern of behavior over 20 years as part of a close friendship with the Harlan Crow family, but he says basically that his colleagues discussed this and advised that he was just fine to let it slide. And in fact, that in itself highlights a big problem with the Supreme Court right now, and that is there is no enforceable ethics code on the justices. There's no independent oversight.
So again, I'm really baffled here, because what are you trying to say, that you can't have billionaire friends? I mean, the entire military-industrial complex is overseen and run by billionaires. Same with the banking industry. So you know that they're going to reach out to people in influential positions, whether it's a Supreme Court justice or a senator or a governor or a congressman. And it's been going on. Why are they singling out Thomas?
Of the justices. No one checking to make sure that they're in compliance with federal regulations, with federal law. It's all self-policing. So here Justice Thomas seems to be saying in his statement today that he had every intention of disclosing this, no conflicts of interest, no cases discussed, that this was pure friendship, and justices are allowed to have friends and travel with friends. But here he says he means to disclose, he will in the future, but if you read between the lines, he contends that he did nothing wrong.
I mean, I don't know why he would in the future. They haven't presented any type of violation or crime of anything at all. Not even a little bit.
Right. So bottom line, no rules were broken because there was no rule to break. So in the wake of...
There was no rule to break.
Of that report from ProPublica, Justice Thomas is also in the spotlight for being one of two Supreme Court justices dissenting in a case about a 12-year-old transgender girl in West Virginia who challenged a ban on transgender athletes in girls' sports. Can you break?
So here it is. This is what it's really about. And look, man, I hate having to constantly talk about this issue. I really do. But it ain't going nowhere. And it's more than just a bunch of sickos that want to have at your children and mutilate them. They want to change the species. The species of humanity. That's what it's about, ultimately. And you look at this integration, and just every time I scratch and sniff a story, it smells like transhumanism. It stinks. It's stinky.
Down that case for us, and how did this all play out?
A significant case, Alexis. This is the first time the Supreme Court has weighed in on a state ban against transgender student athletes. And we've talked about these and reported on these. 19 states making some effort on that front. 3 states have lawsuits. West Virginia is one of them that's underway. It's blocked currently, that law, in federal court. And the Supreme Court said yesterday that they will not get involved right now, that they're going to sit on the sidelines and let these battles over transgender student athletes continue to play out in the court system. And that means effectively they will not allow West Virginia's law to take effect. It's on hold. And that was a win for this 12-year-old transgender girl and her family. She's a middle school cross.
Oh, look at him smile. It's a win to let a biological boy compete against little girls. That's a win. That's a W.
country and track runner. She's been participating on the team, they say, without any incident or problem for years. She'll get to continue to do that now while this plays out. But as you know, this is a big point of debate in the country right now, and there's a lot of talk about how this should be handled and what the law says.
Yeah, and to that point you just made, West Virginia is one of 19 states that have banned transgender student athletes in just the last 3 years. So what will this ruling, do you think, mean for other states with federal lawsuits still pending?
Well, for now, it means that these legal battles, Alexis, can continue. And that will mean we'll see potentially a patchwork of responses to these laws in certain states as they're challenged and defended in court. It also means that the Supreme Court is going to sit on the sidelines for right now. They are not taking a position in what they did yesterday on the merits or the legality of these transgender student-athlete bans. They likely will in the future when that case, if and when a case gets to them, but for now they're sitting on the sidelines, and so effectively we're sort of in a period where the states and the lower courts are going to sort of see how this shakes out, and we do know that a number of states are pushing ahead, 19 so far. That's up 3 states just from last year, so obviously there's a lot of legislation, particularly in conservative communities, although the families of these transgender students say this is really stigmatizing and hurtful.
Oh, it's stigmatizing and hurtful. Remember I told you facts don't matter anymore? It's all emotions. So they're setting up this narrative about Thomas before they can bring this stuff to the Supreme Court. And again, I wonder if this is the first stepping stone to packing that court out. And acting like, well, we have to pack it out because there's criminals on the court and there's no way to charge them with their criminal behavior or activity. That'll be the excuse. That's the talking point. Danger. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. And again, this is ABC News. Same talking points taking place via AOC. Okay? AOC. And CNN. Let's play that clip.
Now let's speak with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Thank you for joining us on this holiday Sunday.
By the way, this woman literally speaks and looks like a petulant child. I mean, talk about unqualified for the position. I mean, this is an installed media Muppet puppet. Not an original thought in her head, except for what kind of flavor vodka that she likes in her Red Bull bombs. Okay? That's it. That's all it is. Oh, do I like the blueberry or the peach sunshine? Ooh, the Kettle One or the Smirnoff? That's it. That's all she's thinking about. Not much else. And like how to do the bidding of the establishment that got her into power.
The abortion pill ruling doesn't take effect for 7 days. You just heard me discussing that with Javier Becerra. The Biden administration is appealing it. Are you satisfied with what you just heard? And what would it mean for women if approval for this pill is revoked nationwide?
Well, you know, I do, while I commend the Biden administration for appealing the decision, and I believe that Secretary Becerra has been doing a phenomenal job in his role, I do think that when it comes to gaming out what the very real possibilities are in the coming days, weeks, and months, this is not just about speculation, but this is about preparation. And the reality of our courts right now is very disturbing. This ruling is an extreme abuse of power. It is an extraordinary example of judicial overreach. The grounds of the ruling are just completely discredited and without grounds.
See, there's no argument there. See, the grounds are without grounds. The grounds are without grounds. Doesn't tell you anything about it. Doesn't say why it doesn't have any grounds. Doesn't say why it's discredited at all. Doesn't have to. Doesn't have to. This is CNN. You just go with the talking points. This is the reality. They're putting this woman on State of the Union.
And what we also learned this week is that a Supreme Court justice of this court has been...
A Supreme Court justice of this court? I mean, she doesn't speak well. Like, at all. You know, when they used to put puppets out there, like the Barack star, at least he was articulate. Okay, he was. He was an excellent speaker. You know, lawyers speak for sure, but you wouldn't hear him say, the grounds of this case have no grounds. They've been discredited. He might throw in the discredited. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Supreme Court of this court, child, a petulant child.
Receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gifts and expenses and having lifestyle subsidies by a billionaire who has been funding the same types of judicial organizations that appointed this judge in a partisan ruling in the first place.
I'm going to get to that.
That appointed this judge in a partisan ruling in the first place. They didn't want, the establishment really tried to not allow Clarence Thomas on the court for some reason. Like, I have no idea whether or not the sexual harassment claims from Anita Hill were true. All I remember from that era, 1990, I'm the ripe old age of 11. But I'll never forget pubic hair on the Coke can and long dong silver. Someone was talking some long dong silver movie talk, apparently, allegedly, and some pubic hair on a Coke can. And that just really, and sexual advances towards Anita Hill. Now, Thomas denied all of them. Clinton, who we saw earlier, has said that he believed Anita Hill during those hearings. It's almost neither here nor there, since he eventually does get confirmed, and he's been on the court system for 30 plus years. But again, to me, this is the setup to try to what? Pack the Supreme Court and essentially eviscerate states' rights on a multitude of issues, but especially the ones including what? Abortion. Again, not my hill to die on, but I like that it's a states' rights issue at this time, especially when there's no agreed upon limit to that. And that it went from abortion at a month, 2 months, 3 months max to 6 months, and then after they're born, which isn't abortion. It's clearly infanticide. And as a premature baby, I'd say after 6 months, there is no doubt it is infanticide. It's the murder of a child. You want to argue before? I'm not here to make that argument. They don't want that to be a states' rights, and they don't want states to stand up for their parental rights. Ever. They want to make as many people a ward of the state as possible. Institute them into a new type of slavery. My generation, I got this clip of David Icke. Debt slavery is one of the ways they got us. Really, my parents' generation, where it wasn't save, buy a home and a car. It was get a loan, go to college, take a mortgage and a car payment. And take as many of these little magic cards that you swipe will do. We'll give you a score based on that. Genius, brilliant. Debt slavery. Let's get back to AOC breaking, oh yeah. And look, this is a billionaire over 30 years. With Clarence Thomas. And they're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. If it's not even in the millions, this is chump change to this guy. This guy wipes his ass with this kind of money. It's nothing. It's a piss in the wind.
In a second, I just want to stick with abortion first. And what you just heard me ask the secretary about was something that you called on the Biden administration to do, which is just to simply ignore the court ruling. That's a pretty stunning...
A pretty asinine statement. The statement of an ignoramus. Yeah, just ignore the court. Just ignore the entire system. And not on the basis of actual moral grounds, but on the basis of a delusional, disturbing, destructive ideology. That's the truth.
Position, if you think about it in the abstract, about the notion of just ignoring a judge's position. So my question is, when this case is resolved by the Supreme Court, should the administration follow that decision if that decision ends up banning this abortion drug?
Well, you know, I want to take a step back and dig into the grounds around ignoring this preliminary ruling as well. There is an extraordinary amount of precedent for this. There's
an extraordinary amount of precedent for, you know, not abiding by a ruling. And I'm not trying to give any more hype or heat to that whole Tennessee courthouse thing, but give me a break, man. Give me a break. Like, I saw those people. First of all, nothing about that protest in Tennessee was natural. Nothing. That wasn't grassroots. It wasn't natural. It was clearly orchestrated and brought people in as activists, many of whom I would assume were paid. Let's just be honest. Bust in, paid, whatever. And then you got these two cartoon show dudes that are playing into this ultra racist narrative of America, right? And they get all the hype, right? And then the dude on Tucker Carlson on Friday, who's a member of that body in Tennessee, who's obviously not a white guy, who's been there for quite some time, he's like, what is this? I've never been made to feel uncomfortable at all, not even a little bit. I've been here a long time. It's a place of respect. Imagine that. No, we're just going to ignore it. We're going to ignore it all. There's precedence for us just to do whatever the mother truck we want.
Term known as agency non-acquiescence. And this has been used and for folks saying this is a first, that this is precedent setting. It is not. The Trump administration also did this very thing, but also it has happened before. The idea of consistency in governance until there is a higher court ruling is not an unprecedented thing to happen. In fact, when the Trump administration did it, it was arguably through a much, a very grave issue when it came to DACA. The Trump administration was ordered to fully reinstate DACA, the DACA program, and they, in a complete defiance, did not do that. They rely on, the courts rely on the legitimacy of their rulings.
Now, if you forget DACA, this was the Dreamers. The Dreamers. The Trump administration, far from perfect on the border issue. All right? Far from perfect on the immigration issue. Show me the evidence that they just ignored that. Again, what I was seeing was the fact that you had people on the border that were being told by their state representatives, their state governance, to ignore the Trump edicts on the border. And when you look at this, it's always Trump, 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 Trump. I don't even want to bring Trump up. And I've got the mother Trump sitting here in this picture. I want people to look at really quick because we're coming up on the bottom of the hour. Remember, you can listen to the second hour for free over at the InfoWarrior Podbean channel. But if you do want to come over for the video, please consider redvoicemedia.com/Jason, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. Sign up for $1 today. Get the first week for $1. You like it? Stick around. $10 a month. Or lock it in right now at $100 for the year for that second part of the broadcast. Now, Dana White was in Miami. Great card on Saturday night. Don't worry, we're going to go back to AOC. But I just want to mention this. Incredibly popular. On the other side, we're going to play not only the standing ovation, they all walked out to American Badass together. Right? Kid Rock in the news for what he did to the... I didn't even want to talk about the Bud Light nonsense. But yeah, Bud Light hasn't posted on their social media for more than a week after pulling the Mulvaney. Again, trying to promote a mentally ill dude, all right, on a blue-collar beer. I don't even like Bud Light. Anheuser-Busch, no thanks. I mean, they own a ton. People don't understand how many beers Anheuser-Busch owns. A ton. You think you're boycotting them? You're probably not. Not unless you're going to Coors Light. Pretty sure that's not part of the Anheuser-Busch family. Might be on another one. But that guy is incredibly popular, whether you like him or not. Standing ovations. And then Masvidal, who retired, came up short against a very, very astute and talented Gilbert Burns. Gilbert, a man on a mission. Talked about Trump. Loves Trump. You know, he's from Miami. He actually talked about DeSantis, but asked for the Let's Go Brandon rant. And he got it twice. He got the crowd to do the Let's Go Brandon twice. When have we ever been in a situation where there are stadiums of people, all right, cheering on the guy who's supposed to be the next Hitler, the big criminal who just got indicted, who's the bad man? He's the bad man, the bad president. And the actual president can't go anywhere in public with a large amount of people without being heckled or booed. But that's the 81 million vote man. Zombie J, the guy that can't talk, that can't speak. He's the popular guy. I'm so sick of being gaslit when, again, I see these guys getting standing ovations. Not boo. Not lock him up. No, standing ovations. That's reality. And every other network is going to tell you otherwise. And this isn't a Republican rant. Again, we're just in a place called reality. And, I'm going to wait until we go to the flip here to play the Masvidal clip because I don't want a copyright strike, and Zuffa is pretty on the ball when it comes to that. Let's get back to AOC. Let's wrap this clip up, although there's quite a bit left in it, where AOC calls the Republicans criminal. And look, they are, just like the Democrats are criminal, no doubt.
And when they make a mockery of our system, a mockery of our democracy, and a mockery of our law, as what we just saw happen in this Mifepristone ruling, then I believe that the executive branch, and we know that the executive branch has an enforcement discretion, especially in light of a contradicting ruling coming out of Washington.
Should that apply if the Supreme Court upholds the Texas judge's decision?
You know, I think one of the things that we need to examine is the grounds of that ruling. But
once again, the grounds of the ruling. You said the grounds of rulings don't have any grounds. This is the brilliant statesperson, AOC, Sandy Cortez.
I do not believe that the courts have the authority to have the authority over the FDA that they just asserted. And I do.
The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, should be an advisory organization at best. Shouldn't have power over the FDA is corrupt. They're awful. It's a revolving door of paid-for politicians on both sides, AOC. The FDA and Big Pharma have the big old circle jerkins going on. That's what's going on. Give me a break.
I believe that it creates a crisis. Should the Supreme Court do that, it would essentially institute a national abortion ban, because you have an extraordinary amount of states who have implemented surgical bans or bans after very early time periods.
Very early time periods? Again, I don't even like talking about it because in my personal life, I would never adhere to an abortion. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. I would take responsibility for my actions. I severely want children, but they don't want you to have them. And again, these are people that have said 3 months isn't enough, 6 months isn't enough. Maybe, and again, 9 months. Well, maybe we'll just make the baby comfortable. We'll call it a baby, but, it's not really a baby. No, it's a baby. It's a baby.
And then if you pair that with a mifepristone ban, then we will essentially have a ban on abortion. There are certain workarounds. I will admit there would be certain workarounds, but we would have taken a very significant step towards a national abortion ban. Once you ban medication abortion, which represents, or start banning medication abortion, which represents the overwhelming number of abortions in the United States, then we are in extremely dangerous territory. And I would urge the Supreme Court, in its lawlessness that they are exhibiting right now already.
It's lawlessness.
Their extraordinary conflict of interest. I mean, my hope would be that we do not get to that point. But if we do, I do believe that we must start to push back on our system of checks and balances, which is designed to push back.
Our system of checks and balances has been broken for some time. We live in a military-industrial complex, continuity of government, executive within an executive state. That's where we're at. And I mentioned Bill Barr, but Bill Barr's out there talking about how Trump's the weakest candidate, and that's why they're promoting him, because they want him to lose. The man still gets standing ovations amongst tens of thousands. But he's a red state, Jason. Yeah, I'm sure no Democrats came out to go watch the UFC. I'm sure it's just Republicans and conservatives and right-wingers that watch the most popular combat sport in the world. I'm sure that's all that watches ESPN, who has the exclusive deal to the pay-per-views in this country and is owned by Disney. Yeah, okay. I'm in imagination land now. Give me a break. Remember, we're going premium in just a few minutes. redvoicemedia.com/Jason. Sign up today. Support the broadcast.
Should there be an example of judicial tyranny and judicial overreach?
Let's talk more about the Supreme Court and what you mentioned before, which is that Justice Clarence Thomas, you want him to be impeached.
Impeach him for no crime. Impeach him for no violation. Impeach, impeach, impeach. Whoa. And again, I'm not saying there isn't cronyism going on. I'm not saying the Bohemian Grove's a great place. Impeach. Impeach. Don't abide by what the court says and impeach the guy you don't like. But really, in my mind, when that fails, this is where the call on the Biden administration start packing the court before the next election is where it's at. Can you imagine they start packing the court before November 2020 and they just start appointing justices like that?
After a new ProPublica report this week revealed that he accepted luxury vacations from a Republican billionaire donor without disclosing them. Thomas is now defending himself, and here's what he's saying. He's saying, quote, "Early in my tenure at the court, I sought guidance from my colleagues and others in the judiciary and was advised that this sort of personal hospitality from close personal friends who did not have business before the court was not reportable, rather. What is your response?
I think that his own statement contradicts many of the facts on the ground and also raises, in other ways, even more serious questions. Later on in his statement, he stated that the reason and the rationale for this exemption was personal hospitality from an old friend. And he said himself in his statement, a friend of 25 years. Justice Thomas has been on the court for 30 years.
33.
And so to say what he is admitting in his statement in an attempt to defend himself is that he began this relationship with a billionaire and receiving these sorts of gifts after he was appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States.
So once again, when you're in those types of positions of power, you get introduced to a lot of powerful people. A lot. And if one of those people becomes your friend, There's nothing illegal about that. Now, did this guy have undue influence over the court? I can't say one way or the other. I wasn't there for private conversations. I'm not saying it's not a possibility. But on the surface, there's clearly no there. All right. Here's the deal, everybody. We're going to start closing them out one at a time. I want you to come over to the paid portion of the broadcast or go listen for free over on the InfoWarrior Podbean channel. We're going to play the rest of that clip. We're going to play Jorge Masvidal calling for the Let's Go Brandon via Trump at UFC. We've got sustainable goals and development from the UN, a couple of videos that we're going to be breaking down. And then we've got David Icke talking about debt slavery years and years and years ago. All that's coming up on the premium portion of the broadcast. I'd like to remind everybody that when we do this, when we do this every single Monday through Thursday, we also release the premium from 2 weeks earlier. And I usually put a link to like 4 or 5 videos that get released over on my Twitter, so you can now watch the premium for free as well. We love to give it all away. All right. I'm almost a minute over, so let's start doing this one at a time. I want to thank everybody who's been a part of this broadcast over at Rockfin. I love you guys.